we have a kind of a rollover from the normally scheduled meeting. We have 5 items. We have item 1, which is a public hearing, Land Use and Development Code Amendment, LD 2003. Item 2, another public hearing, Land Use and Development Code Amendment, Floodplain. Item 3, another public hearing, Land Use and Development Code Amendment, a zoning map amendment. Item 4, a discussion, preliminary subdivision, Gary and Megan Jordan, Guardian Estates. Item 5, a discussion, subdivision pre-application, JDP LLC, North Quorum Road subdivision. And may we have a roll call, please?
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Frank.
Present.
Mr. Walsh.
Present.
Mr. Burrows.
Present.
Mr. Hager.
Here.
Mr. Benson. Mr. Benson did send an email that he'll be absent tonight or late. Mr. Delaney.
Present.
And Mr. Grassi.
Present. Thank you. And Chairman's report, that's me. I do not have anything to report this evening. Next, we will have the committee reports, starting with the Ordinance Review Committee.
We have not met since our last meeting.
Thank you. And then the Comprehensive Plan Implementation Committee.
Same thing, nothing.
Thank you. And do we have an administrative review report?
We do, Mr. Chairman. So we've had 2 minor site plan applications come in, one for 5 Shaw Mills Road, another one for the Frost and Flame on Main Street, and the Shaw's Mill Road one will be on April 10th. The other one is, it just came in, so we're working to schedule that, tentatively be at the end of April. We've also had a de minimis change for Cottage Advisors to road grade there, and I think that's the extent of the administrative reports.
Thank you very much. And I just realized I skipped over approval of the February 26th, 2024 Planning Board minutes. Did we have a chance to look at those?
I've reviewed them a couple of times, and I have to admit I did not see anything amiss, but I would be open to other members to see if they've noticed anything incorrect in the minutes from the February 26th Planning Board meeting.
Anything else? Yes, Jim.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To Mr. Bowles' point, on page 6 of 7, that last paragraph we talk about in the second line, Ms. Burns suggested adding the word status after conservation, and then when we get down to the second to the last line, the word becomes conversation. I believe that should be conservation. Spelled correctly, but the wrong word, I believe.
Right.
Would someone else like to confirm that?
We'll take a look at that and make the adjustment if that's indeed the correct word to use in that context.
Thank you.
Anything else? And if not, is there a motion?
So moved.
Jim? Is there a second? All in favor? Looks like we have 5.
Mr. Chairman, I have to abstain. I was not in the meeting.
Thank you. All right, that will take us to the agenda for this evening.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I have
Yes.
a question on the agenda,
Sure.
if I may. I was looking at this, and I know we had 2 items left over from the last meeting. I was kind of curious why they have the order and whether those could be moved up in the lineup. I know it's public hearings, which may have some rules about them, but just asking if that could be done.
Yes, in fact, the planning board rules dictate the agenda priority list, and so public hearings come first, and then everything else after that. That does not mean that the board can't sift and sort at your will.
My take is, I don't think these will be too long, but open if anyone wants to shuffle the order or leave as is. Yes, Jim?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Out of respect for the order of the agenda, I'd like to take items 4 and 5 and then follow public hearing only because of the lateness of the last meeting, and hope others would concur.
Yeah. So we'll take a vote on that. All in favor of,
Is there a second?
Second.
second, all in favor? Looks like all in favor. We will move items 4 and 5 to the beginning of the meeting. Thank you. So we will start with what we have on our sheets as item 4, which is a discussion, preliminary subdivision, Gary and Megan Jordan Guardian Estates. It's a request for approval to construct 12 single-family house lots with 2 additional lots that will support up to 4 units each on Waterhouse Road. Map 18, Lot 5.001, Zone Urban Expansion. Applicant is represented by Austin Fagan with BH2M. And I saw him earlier. Hopefully we can bring him in the room.
Maybe he thinks he's fourth on the list.
Thinks he's fourth.
The
Yes.
town engineer is looking for.
Okay, that's what I thought. Yeah. Yeah, I just saw him about 4 minutes ago. Okay.
Maybe take up number 5.
Yeah, why don't we do this? We'll take up number 5. And I think, yeah, Owens, you're here. So item 5, which is also a discussion, subdivision pre-application JDP LLC, North Gorham Road subdivision, a request for approval to construct a 6-lot, single-family subdivision, map 92, lot 25, zone suburban residential. The applicant is represented by Owens McCullough with Sebago Technics. And if we could have some background from planning, please.
Absolutely, Mr. Chair. So this is an application time before the board for a 5-lot subdivision. So it's listed as a 6-lot subdivision. What they're proposing is really a 5-lot subdivision with 1 outsale lot. It's consistent with the comprehensive plan, which calls for the continued suburban residential zoning for this district. The suburban residential zoning allows for this type of development. So one thing we'd be looking for as far as meeting the zoning subdivision is clarification about the outsale lot. So subdivision rules from the state say it should be included on the plans, but not included in the evaluation and the calculations and so forth. So we'll look for some clarification on that. The natural resources conservation evaluation shows that there's not a significant wildlife habitats that are noted in the data set. The applicant's not proposing any major wetland alterations. There are wetlands on the site, however, that should be addressed in the review. As far as utilities go, the nearest public sewer is 20,000 feet away. Public water is 4,700 feet away. The applicant submitted calculations showing the proposed build-out. As has been discussed previously on the subject, we do look for the maximum build-out scenario for showing the public water versus private water cost calculation. So we'll be looking for the applicant to provide that. The applicant is looking for a waiver from the requirement to provide a Class A high-intensity soil survey. The zoning ordinance does allow for the planning board to provide this waiver for subdivisions. They're not required to provide net acreage, and this is one of those subdivisions. So it's up to the board to make that determination if they want to provide that waiver. With that, Mr. Chair, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you. And now we will hear from the applicant.
My name is Owens McCullough with Sebago Technics here tonight on behalf of JDP LLC. Thank you for taking me out of order. As much as I like to stay all night with you, I appreciated that. Thank you. The project in front of you is located at the intersection of Great Falls Road and North Gorham Road. The development parcel is about 9.21 acres in size. We're proposing 5 lots, and as Damon indicated, let's see, I'll move over here. This was the original parcel here. There was one out sale a year ago. There's actually a house on it right in this location here. The aerials just haven't caught up with it. So that was an allowed out sale. And then we're proposing 5 new lots on the parcel. So however we need to label those, we will when we come back. What I've done right now is I've just, for this pre-application, is labeled the 5 lots. I suppose we could call that Lot 6 if we need to, but label it as an out sale if it needs to be shown on the parcel, just so it's clear. The lots in this zone, the lot sizes are based on, or the density is based on 60,000 square feet. I think you can go down to 40,000, but all of our lots are 60+ thousand square feet with at least 200 feet of frontage on the roads. We've tried to bring the parcels as best we could off of the lesser road, which is the Great Falls Road, and these are all just a little over 200 feet. So all of these lots are right around the minimum of the road frontage, and the lot sizes range from about 1.3 to the largest lot, which is 3.2 acres. We've been on site, mapped the wetlands, we looked at vernal pools. This was last year during the vernal pool season. There were no significant vernal pools. If you look in the application package, Anna Biddle of our office did a vernal pool assessment. They found some egg masses in a location here, but those are below the thresholds that the DEP would consider as jurisdictional vernal pools. So we fell outside of that. But the wetlands are mapped. Each lot has at least 2 test pits on it. The soils on the lot are generally a sandy soils with water table within as close as 12 inches to the surface and as deep as about 30 inches. So the land's fairly flat. There's a pretty good sized wetland complex in the back, and we are not proposing any wetland impact. In fact, when we submit for the for the full subdivision review, we'll add notation that restricts any further any wetland impacts on it, or at least notifies that those wetlands would have to be preserved. All the lots have decent building envelopes on them, and again, septic and well would be on each lot. We did go through the analysis on lots. What we submitted was based on the 5 lots for the well or the public water, which showed a ratio of, I think, like $140,000 per lot compared to $30,000 per lot. And when I reran it for 10 units, which would be the maximum density, it was still more than double the cost at maximum to bring public water to the site. And it's just simply because of the distance, where the nearest public water on the site is over at Westcott Road and Barstow Road, and then public sewer is all the way down to the Great Falls School, so it's almost 4 miles away, so it's a long ways away. Again, this is a pretty basic subdivision. JDP LLC stands for John D. Finney. Mike Finney is the named applicant on it, and this land was part of the Finney estate that they're looking to subdivide. If the board, we're asking for 2 waivers on it. One was, and it's basically because it's such a small project, one is the high-intensity soil surveys. We've done all the wetlands mapping, low-intensity subdivision, and we've done test pits on all the parcels. And the other is a hydrogeologic survey. Usually that's done when you start to have higher density developments that have a lot of development on them, and this just isn't the case. It's a pretty small subdivision. No road construction is being proposed on the lots. All the lots would have access directly onto Great Falls Road. With the exception of Lot 5 that's shown on this plan, and that would be off of the North Gorham Road. That whole section is It's got great sight distance up through there. Chuck I think he's been up there to see it. So the development is pretty simple, pretty straightforward. And tonight's a pre-application just to start the process. And we're here to answer any questions the board has. Thank you.
Thank you. I suppose it'd be good to look at these waivers. So I definitely remember, you know, when we can waive the Class A soil survey, but what about the hydrogeological study? Are we allowed to do that?
You are.
Yeah, okay. What does everyone think of that? It seems to be pretty straightforward. It doesn't seem like a Class A soil survey would be very worthwhile here. Everyone else thinking the same?
Yes.
Do we want to make a motion and take care of that waiver? Those waivers, I guess. Would we make those waivers independent, two independent waivers, or all in one?
You could do it all in one.
We could.
You might have a discussion about the
Hydrogeologic?
just to find out more information.
Right.
Why it's not needed.
Yeah, it would be good. What's the applicant's take on why the hydrogeological study may not
So-
be?
Fair enough. Good question. So oftentimes, we're looking at developments that are 10, 15 lots or more, which concentrates septic systems in a pretty tight radius around a site. So then you begin to want to look closely at how those systems interact. We are proposing that you still have to follow this, even if you waive it, you still have to follow the main state subsurface wastewater rules, which have specific requirements of separations between septic systems and wells, and septic systems and wetlands and drainage areas and septic systems and houses. So all of those still apply. That still has to happen. But we're talking about 5 lots and a very limited development density. And if there was ever a case, it just seemed to make sense in this location, and that's why we were asking.
Thank you. Yes, Jim.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I see the waiver request to change the soil survey. I don't see any language in our meeting notes about the hydrogeological study. I don't.
I think it's just that next bullet point. That's really all it is.
Bullet point?
After in the waiver, are you looking at the waivers on page?
Page 3
Three?
of 6.
Yeah, page 3. The bullet
No.
one.
Yes, thank you, but
Yeah.
I see the
Oh,
the highlighted text.
Waiver language.
For the language.
Yes.
On the waiver for the Class B soil,
Right,
but I
yep.
don't see any language.
I don't either.
It was inadvertently omitted.
No,
A
no
mistake.
criticism.
A
I just want to
mistake.
make sure we have it right.
And so you can either add the words geologic study to the current wording, or make a completely separate motion to allow a waiver from that in and of itself. You could do it in one motion.
Yeah.
Just add the words.
I'd like to keep them separate myself.
Okay. Yeah.
For the public, for public edification
Sure.
that we see,
I do as well.
is my opinion.
Yep. That makes sense.
I keep them separate as well, yes.
Any discussion or a motion, or would someone like to make a motion or 2 motions?
Go for it. You got it in front of you, Jim.
Reading the highlighted text, motion to move to grant waiver to JDP LLC to allow a submission of a Class B soil survey instead of the required Class A soil survey for the proposed, are we going to say 5-lot subdivision? Is that, we're not going to say 6, correct?
That's true. It is a 5-lot.
It is a 5, so continuing with the language, a 5-lot subdivision at map 92, lot 25.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Looks like all 7 in favor, 7-0. And did we want to make a second motion for the second waiver request? Anyone else? Yes, Jim.
Maybe I didn't understand it. So why, I know the density of septic systems, blah, 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 and radius from well water, et cetera. We're avoiding that because we have enough space between all of these? Is that,
Correct.
okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'd like to make a motion
Yes.
to grant a waiver to JDP LLC to allow, or to waive the requirement to conduct a hydrogeological study
Is there a second?
for the proposed 5-lot subdivision map, 92 lot 25.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Second. Rob, all in favor? Again, 7-0. So, we've got those waivers. What do we, does the board have items we'd like to discuss? So, looks like the utilities are pretty clear cut. Yes, Jim.
Thank you once again, Mr. Chairman. I'm just curious if town engineer, Mr. Norton, have you, I know we have these spreadsheets, I'm sure, that calculate what the real cost is, and I'm sure they're accurate based on the profile that they have. Any chance you've gone through and verified the numbers that they calculated are close or right?
Excuse me. I have not gone through their numbers to validate them, but I believe that calculation is.
It's very prescriptive.
prescriptive,
I don't have any latitude in it. I literally put the number of, I literally put the lots in it, and we take the engineering, the inflation index, and we plug that in, and it's literally self-populates. I think it was created by the council years ago and planning board based on empirical information. So I don't really do anything in it other than populate it. I would say that it would probably be more, the cost to bring public water here would be probably more than what that calculation says, but.
So it's a template that you'll just.
Yeah.
fill in the numbers. Okay, well, I'll have to assume that the template's correct. Thank you.
And
I'm sorry, just for my own understanding, so that template's a town? It's a town template that everyone
It is.
applies for?
We use it for everybody
Okay.
who's in the district where this is required.
Okay.
in regards to access management, so you've got the 4 lots on Great Falls. I don't think there's any way to get that 5th lot there. So, doesn't seem to be many options.
Site distance is pretty good in that location on
Yeah.
North Gorham Road too,
Right.
so.
Yeah.
But we put everything we could over on Great Falls Road.
Anything else? Anything from the board? or-
The only question would be, so this, is it, because of the type of project, if we get through with the town staff, could we, when we come back, could we come back for preliminary and final at the same time? It's such a straightforward project. It might save some room on the agenda. And I look at Carol and I look at Chuck and look at Damon. It's up to you folks, and the board, of course, but I don't know, it just seems like a project like this is pretty straightforward.
It is pretty straightforward, and as long as we have 98% of the information that's required for everything, it is possible. And the board does allow some things for the staff to review or make sure we take in for information. So if the board would allow that, we'd move forward with that and make sure that they do in fact submit everything that's needed.
I think Carol just said it's up to me to make sure I dot my i's and cross the t's.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Carol. That was a polite way of saying, don't miss anything.
Anything else from the board? Well,
I
thank
think
you very
I'm good.
much. Yes.
Thank you for taking me out of order. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Thank you.
That brings us to item 4, which is a discussion, preliminary subdivision, Gary and Megan Jordan, Guardian Estates, a request for approval to construct 12 single-family house lots with 2 additional lots that will support up to 4 units, each on Waterhouse Road, map 18, lot 5.001, zone urban expansion. The applicant is represented by Austin Fagan with BH2M. And if we could have some background from planning, please.
Certainly, Mr. Chair. So this is the second time this item has been before the board. It came before the board for sketch plan review in October 2023, and the board did a site walk in November 2023. Since that time, the applicants made some adjustments to the plan. Now they're proposing to create 12 single-family house lots and 2 lots that would support future multifamily development of 4 units each. So some items of note, we're still looking for, there's some outstanding items, proof of financial capacity that they plan to provide after the town has reviewed preliminary review of the design. The state and federal permits are outstanding, including DEP and Army Corps. Nitrate plume analysis that they intend to complete prior to final subdivision, and additional plan revisions needed per comments from peer reviewers. So it's worth noting at this time that they're not proposing to do development of the multifamily lots, which would require site plan review. So that's why it's subdivision review and there's not a site plan review application before you. They're aware that if they did intend to move forward with that, they need to go through site plan review. 150-foot wide buffer strip has been conveyed to the abutters on the south side of the lot. That's a change from last time. The applicants provided net residential density calculations. Those are used to create the build-out scenario, and the build-out scenario they provided showed that the provision of public versus private water were very close in cost. So that's something the board should ask the applicant for more information about. There's also a requirement for provision of sidewalks and pedestrian connections within and to the development, and that's something the board should discuss with the applicant as well. And with that, let's see. One more thing. The applicant's looking to minimize wetland impacts and has assessed vernal pools on the site and has determined that there's 2 of them. One is classified as non-significant by Army Corps. The other is a non-jurisdictional feature. As far as conservation as well, the applicant's proposing to create a trail on the western perimeter of the site. We're looking for some clarification on the easement to access that trail. So I'm looking for the applicant to please provide that. With that, I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And now we'll hear from the applicant.
Thanks for teeing that up for me there, Damon. My name is Austin Fagan. I'm here with BH2M, representing Gary and Megan Jordan, as well as Don Grant. As Damon had stated, the applicant is bringing forward a 14-lot subdivision that you saw before for sketch plan review. This consists of 12 single-family homes and 2 potential multifamily lots that will be able to serve up to 4 units each. We're not proposing the multifamily dwellings at this point, just subdividing the lots off, may be sold as part of the project, may be developed in the future. But right now they're just being considered lots with density for up to 4 units. The proposed roadway will consist of a 24-foot curbed roadway section with a 9-foot esplanade and 5-foot sidewalk to meet the on-site requirement for sidewalks. And stormwater from this proposed roadway will be discharged to a soil filter at the beginning of the project in this area, and a wet pond on the southwestern side of the project. We understand there was a comment from the Conservation Commission, I believe it was, as part of the original review for low impact development techniques. And we are proposing a soil filter, which is a low impact development technique in terms of the back of the site. We do need to meet the pre-development flow rates for stormwater criteria, and a fair amount of volume storage is required for this project. So we are proposing the wet pond for that, which will be discharged to a level spreader and put back into sheet flow before leaving the site. We've reviewed staff comments and understand there are some additional documents that Damon stated, such as financial capacity, state and federal permits, and a nitrate assessment. We do plan on getting all that information to you for our next submission. We have provided calculations for public water showing that the public service would be more expensive than wells and septics on each site, and that's for the full build out of the project. So looking at if we were proposing 20,000 square foot lots rather than 40,000 in order to get the maximum density, which is required by the ordinance. It was mentioned in the memo that we should request a waiver from the requirement. Just looking for some clarification on if a waiver is required, since we show that the public service is actually more money. We're happy to put it on the form if that is necessary. Let's see. We have reviewed the comments from the town's attorney, the traffic review engineer, and the third-party review engineer. All comments involve minor changes to the HOA documents and plans, but no major design changes have been requested. We've also reviewed planning and engineering comments. There are a few tip downs that should be added for ADA access, things like that, but nothing major. If the board believes that these documents and revisions are somewhat minor and would still allow for a preliminary approval, we would be happy to accept one tonight. Realizing that there is some stuff left, we'd be happy to move the project as far forward as we can. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. So one of the questions was on the water service. They don't need a waiver from that, do they? You just submit the calculation?
You would decide based on the calculation that they've submitted. It doesn't really need a waiver.
Right.
You would select either, we would like you to do public, we would like you to do private.
Right. That's what I thought.
So on that same topic, at least from the information that I have, it looks like the cost is basically the same, 34,000 versus 33.5. I understand that's based on the total build out, max build out. Mm-hmm. But I guess I'm just thinking forward to multi-unit. If the multi-units were included, then the numbers seem to make more sense because they're basically equal. So I'm just, if there's more information about that or why we should consider one over the other, because the cost doesn't seem to be that different, unless I'm missing something.
So with the calculation, so based on the spreadsheet that the town provided, we would be proposing, or would need to propose 20,000 square foot lots that would give us a total allowable density of 40 units rather than 20. With the multi-unit, the multi-family lots or potential, it would still only give us a maximum of 20. That being said, the water calculation has some things to take into account, such as ledge removal, other unforeseen things that may come into play with construction. In terms of this property, there is fairly shallow ledge, and from talks with the Public Works Director, believes that along 114 and Waterhouse Road, there's also a lot of ledge that would be run into. And just for a, sort of a grander view of this, there would require about 10,000 linear feet total of water for this project in order to serve it. That would be about 7,500 feet between going from, I believe it's a Weeks Road area down to Waterhouse, and then from 114 all the way up Waterhouse and then within the subdivision itself. So though the calculation shows that they are close, realistically, we've had some preliminary cost estimates done for the project, and we were given numbers that are about 3 times what the spreadsheet gives us for installing public infrastructure. Requiring it would likely kill the project.
Well, sharing those estimates would be helpful, I think.
Okay.
At least for me, and yeah, I think that sharing those estimates would be helpful, because you're also going to run into the same ledge problem with septic, I would imagine. So you're still going to have, and wells, you're still going to have those. I mean, wells, you're still going to have some issues with the ledge. So.
Yeah.
Gary Jordan, the applicant. I just want to expound on what Austin just said. So the current way, and please, Carol, correct me on any discrepancies I have with this. The current way the ordinance is written is that all the calculations for water density are done based on the clustered subdivision for water and sewer, which means, as Austin was trying to allude to, the density we would have to do for the calculation for the water would be based on 40 units, not the 20. So because we have elected to do larger lots to match the local, I mean, the majority of the houses on Waterhouse are all 1 acre plus lots. We're matching that ambiance, that setting inside that neighborhood. Because we're matching that, we're actually a little bit penalized by the ordinance. If we were to really slam this density, do clustered, bring in water and sewer, get the lots down to 20,000 square feet or less, then the cluster would make a little more sense. But right now, that it's an apples to oranges calculation that makes it really tough. So while the numbers do look on paper like they match, once again, as Austin alluded to, the 4 units don't actually help in any way in the calculation, because it's already built on a 20 unit versus the 40 unit that the spreadsheet requires. I know it's a bit convoluted. I think Carol might be able to help more.
If I may.
Please, Carol.
Yes.
The way it's been described to me is that calculation sheet was created 10 or 15 years ago. And it's based on the comprehensive plan growth areas. And so for the zoning that matches up with the growth areas, we would like there to be more lots. And so thus it is leaning toward, we want you to create more lots where our growth areas are. We do not have this calculation in the more rural districts, and it's on purpose. That gives you a little background and information. In order to sort of figure out what you want to do, I would have the applicant do a deep dive into the calculation with the town engineer and go over the ledge and all that sort of thing that is adding to the cost. So that would be my recommendation for the board.
Thank you.
Just one additional comment for the board. When we did purchase this land, it was rural, so that I would hope that could be considered. Obviously, it got rezoned along the way to urban expansion. So that should just be a factor, maybe, of consideration. Although I do realize that the application is being submitted now after that zoning has already changed. Thank you.
I mean, going from 40 units to 20 units, significant effect on these numbers. Significant, yeah. Yes.
I'm just curious, if we take the 40 units and divide it by 2, is it going to be the same dollar value?
So what we're comparing this to is the 20 units,
I understand. So you got
still
40 over
34.
here, and you got a total value for 40, and we're only going to build 40, and we only want to build 20, I understand that.
Yep.
So we take the value of 40 and divide it by 2, and what is the individual, so you're multiplying each one of those 40 by 2.
So we're saying just for the well number, correct?
For water, right? I'm not talking about sewer.
Okay, yeah, so, yeah, the public number would stay the same, and the private for wells would be cut in half, correct?
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So those numbers, I'm sorry,
No, go ahead.
so those numbers were only with respect to water and not sewer?
Correct. But it's more of a catch-22, because in order to meet the ordinance, I believe you need sewered lots. So if you bring the water, you have to bring the sewer as well.
So do we have estimates on the sewer also?
We do not, because the ordinance requires that if you're further than 500 feet away, I believe. There's also a calculation, I believe, that Carol brought up in the review. But the ordinance, as I have read it in the past, that if you're greater than 500 feet away, you don't need to install sewer. But the water calculation does not include sewer.
So,
500 feet is the number.
so if you're 500 from an existing sewer line, you do not have to run sewer?
That's what the ordinance says.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Chairman, you know, when I listen to this, and you look at the location, this is, I think, I heard the expression catch-22. You know, if I put this one aside for a moment, comprehensive plan says that we want to have density down there. If the Gorham connector was to move ahead, that's really where density needs to be. Now, this subdivision, obviously, they're laying out is not what you would call high density in any respect. They're at the end of a road. They're a long way from it. It's only 20 lots. I can't see how we can pin water and sewer onto this thing. It's really, to me, to develop South Gorham, it's going to take more than a size of this project. And it may take the town contributing into that in some way with PWD. So I think it's a lot to ask. You know, we're kicking back numbers here between 20 and 40. I think it's a lot to ask in a subdivision of this size in this location to take on that responsibility. I think it needs to be a bigger endeavor, or a bigger effort.
Yeah, I think I agree with that as well. What does the rest of the board think?
If I could also, I did want to address Mr. Benson's question. I did get an initial quote from Dearborn, and they were estimating, I don't want to misquote it, but it was something along the lines of $300 per linear foot down South Street for the existing road, and then combined with anything inside the property as well. It was well in excess of over $1 million for just to get water and sewer there, which completely makes the whole project not.
Yeah, it's just would be helpful to have
Oh,
some
absolutely.
of those estimates. I mean,
And
that
I'd be-
helps us make our decision.
And in the and I'll be more than happy to submit that when I get a chance. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Jim?
Well, the water's pressurized, that's no problem, but the sewage has got to be pumped. So you'd like to say, we're going to dig a trench, we're going to put 2 pipes in it, multiply the value of the pipe times 2, but on the sewage side, we're going to be pumping. So an old rule of thumb used to be $1 million a mile. I don't know how close that is now with escalation clauses, but that's what we used to do, any civil engineers in the audience here. I mean, $1 million a mile. It's expensive. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Jim?
Mr. Chairman, in the sake of moving this along, are you only wanting us to discuss right now the water sewer thing?
I think it would be good to kind of take care of that. So we don't need a formal waiver, but I think we should just make it known if we would require, that's correct, right? We don't need a formal waiver, we just
True.
need to, I think the board should decide if it's okay with the way they want to proceed, or we think we would want them to try for public water. Yes.
I'm okay with well water and sewer, just to move the discussion along.
Yep.
I would also put an asterisk and say, let's look at this template.
Yeah.
That's for a different day.
That might be a good workshop topic.
I think that would be an excellent workshop topic, because you think about our sidewalk funding and how that works. You know, maybe as we develop something like this and we allow them to, to continue to do private, maybe it's, also there's an in lieu of to pay into that, because eventually it's going to happen, and we would hope that those homes in that area might someday connect in.
If everyone's okay, we'll move on and just move on to the rest of the development application.
Yep.
Okay. There's a lot of items, financial capacity, that'll come later. Permits are in process.
Yes.
Nitrate plume analysis.
That's something that we've waited on pending
Yep.
getting a positive decision on using well and septic.
Mr. Chair, just
Yes.
for clarity's sake, I would say make a vote on allowing the wells,
Okay,
the private
All
water
right.
system.
good idea. So, vote in favor of private water service.
Do we need a motion or a vote?
Motion, second, and vote, please.
Okay, I guess a motion, if someone would like to make a motion.
I'll just wing it, Mr. Chair. We move that this project, and what is the name of it?
Guardian Estates.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We move that the Guardian Estate subdivision be allowed to utilize private water and sewer.
Is there a second?
I second.
And all in favor? Looks like we have 7-0 on that.
Thank you.
I had a question on the vernal pools.
Yep.
What was the wording? One was, I was wondering, what does that mean? I don't know if this planning would answer this or the applicant, the non-jurisdictional? I've never heard that before.
Yeah, so more or less what that means, it is a man-made feature. It's an excavation that was used for an irrigation pond at one point. And based on my understanding of the write-up, because it's a man-made irrigation pond, you know, it's standing water, so likely amphibious creatures are going to go in there and lay some eggs, but it's not a natural man-made depression, so therefore they have no jurisdiction over that area.
Ah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yep.
Good question.
I'm not sure when you were explaining the project overall, the town was wondering if, details on access to that trail system. Did you, I don't know if you addressed that. If you did, forgive me, I missed it, but would you like to speak on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you look on the western portion of the parcel, there is a 15-foot access easement that was provided along the bypass. This was requested by Parks and Rec, I believe. What they're looking for is we have a wet pond that's going to come in the drainage easement area on the southwestern portion of the parcel, and sidewalks that are going along the entire roadway. So what we're looking at here, can you hear me? Is so part of the trail system, if you will be the sidewalk that goes around. There will then be an access along this easement that will turn out towards the west and come along the western portion from south to north in order to tie into the Crosby property. This will allow potential future connection for any bike trails or access for pedestrian use. The minor changes that they're looking for are for us to extend the easement down through this little triangular piece here in order to possibly get connectivity along the entire bypass at some point, I would assume. Other than that, it's minor details of who's this going to be dedicated to, how will it be handled, things of that nature, which we can deal with the coming submission.
Thank you. Yes, Dave.
Yeah, and thank you for asking the question. I had the same one in mind. I have a question about lot 14. It's and when I see the drainage easement, which occupies a good portion of lot 14, and lot 14 would have the potential for 4 units down the road.
Yep.
And you have the vernal pool to one side, so that's non-buildable. But with the drainage easement, you still left with enough land for, would be, what, 4-unit townhouse or something like that?
Yes, something of that nature, either 2 duplexes or
Yeah.
potential like house dominiums or single units, but there is a fair amount of room. It may look squeezed, but with the scale of the drawing, there is still a fair amount of room in there for development.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anything else from the board?
Mr. Chair, I just,
Yes.
one thing comes to mind, just wanted to note for the board. The applicant has done some tree clearing on the site. We discussed this with them, I think it was now over 6 weeks ago, so I meant to mention it before. They were allowed to do this, it was fully allowed because they hadn't submitted for preliminary subdivision at that point. But just so the board knows, there'd be some differences in the way the site looks now versus when the board went on the site walk. So I just wanted to make sure we noted that for you. And we did discuss that with the applicant. They said they would possibly be able to get some aerial footage showing the changes to the site for the board's information. So sorry not to mention that earlier.
That's all right. Thank you.
And just to expand on that, thank you, Damon. The only areas that have been cut at this point are the proposed right-of-way that you see on the plan. I know we had discussed keeping some of the buffering along the bypass with the existing forested area, and that's all been kept. It's more or less just a 50-foot swath for accessing. As you know, it was very difficult to get through there during our site walk. So.
Mr. Chairman, one question I do have. I recall on the site walk, there was some discussion with at least one neighbor, and I know there was some talk of neighbors about how where the road came off of Waterhouse.
Yep.
Did you get that all squared away with the neighbors?
Yes, so we, I guess different from the original plan that you saw, we have moved the roadway, or we've staggered it within the property so that any headlights coming out will face into an existing open area with a treed buffer. Okay. Additionally, I think they had questions on requirements for blasting and things of that nature. Mm-hmm. There will likely be blasting in this area, and that's something that we'll have to take into consideration as part of the project. I'm not sure if that's part of the building permit process or whatnot, but Carol, might you have more information on that, possibly?
You would give any blasting information to the code office about
Okay.
timing and that sort of thing,
Okay, thank you.
whoever's doing the blasting.
Okay, thank you.
What does the board think here? Do we want to make a motion, or is there anything else we're looking for, or any other questions?
What's the motion for tonight?
We have 2 options.
Page 25.
Yeah, I'm getting there.
Yeah, I'll move to grant preliminary subdivision approval for Guardian Estates subdivision located at M118 in the urban residential expansion zone districts based on findings of facts and conditions of approval as written by the town planner.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Looks like we have 6-1. 6-1.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
For the opposed or abstain?
Opposed. I'd like to explain my position, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure.
Financial capacity has not been proven yet. No disrespect, but it's a major, money's usually a major element. and we have land improvements and homeowners associations, and the applicant hasn't provided information on how they will meet that requirement. I mean, those are two weighty things in my opinion. That's why I voted against. My opinion, I would have moved to table until we got this information, but I'm fine with the way it went.
So my understanding, those conditions have to be met before going forward. I mean, that's
Yes.
that's part of the.
In order to have you grant final approval, you'll be looking for those things.
Thank you.
Okay. Have a good evening.
Thank you as well.
So that's not considered a condition of approval?
Minor things usually are, in general. We're speaking in general now since you've closed this
Yeah.
hearing. Minor things are usually looked at. Maybe some landscaping sort of elements. It's not usually large items that you haven't had at least one look at.
No, I understand, but when we're reading a motion that says, we're making a motion for approval, preliminary subdivision, based on finding the facts and conditions of approval, as written by the town planner. So wouldn't the need for the financial, to meet the financial requirements, wouldn't that be a finding of fact or condition of approval?
It is a.
Written, I mean, it's written, it's something you said was needed, so
And
I'm
it's a-
just trying to understand this.
Yep, it's a definite condition.
So it's approved based on the condition. We granted preliminary approval
Yeah.
based on findings of facts and conditions of approval as written.
And the findings of fact, if you read under the financial capacity in that specific case, it says it needs to be submitted.
Right.
So it needs to be submitted for final approval. Before you grant final approval. It's also in the ordinance, so.
Yeah, I mean, my take on that issue is you're gonna get it, you'd stop it before you didn't see it anyway, right? So you're gonna see that before a final. You would have to. Right?
If we didn't, in general,
Right.
we would note that for you, and the board would table it
Yep,
for consent agenda,
yep.
allowing the
Right. I guess
person to
I guess my point is that
give it to you later.
I would change the wording of this, or I have to change my understanding of it, because my understanding is we just approved the preliminary subdivision with conditions.
And that is
So
true.
if those conditions aren't met, then the approval isn't valid.
That is true.
Okay.
Yes,
All right.
that is true.
Otherwise, I wouldn't have voted for it or made the motion.
I'm of the exact same thinking as Bill.
There is an escape clause that we have, which is called a motion for reconsideration. And a motion for reconsideration can only be done by the majority of the people
Yes.
that approved or denied
Right.
that. You're familiar with it, no disrespect.
Yeah. I don't need to reconsider it as long as those conditions of approval are needed. Like our vote just becomes void if the conditions aren't met, and we'd have to go through the whole process again. If that's not true, then maybe I would reconsider. But I've made the motion with the understanding that those conditions have to be met, or it's not a valid. The preliminary subdivision approval isn't valid.
And they're all based on the final plan elements
Sure.
too, everything being completed.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, that's true.
But they'd have to come back, if they didn't meet those conditions, they'd have to come back for another preliminary subdivision approval because they never met those conditions. And
There
our
are,
approval was
there are
based on
some
conditions.
things, generally speaking, always, that are hanging out there
Yes.
for you to finally approve.
Yes.
And financial capacity has been an issue at some points. Entire plans, landscaping plans have been,
Right.
until final approval. There's a few things that the boards have a allowed to wait until final approval because you've just had a discussion specifically about water and sewer, and now they have to do a redesign of some things. So there's things yet to be figured out on their end after you make the decision. So that's why there's a preliminary and then a final. Does that make sense? I mean, if you voted final with things outstanding, that would be a little, I'd be a little nervous.
Well, again, it's approved with conditions. So
the
until the
condition-
conditions are met, the approval
Right.
doesn't take hold. Like, they can't do anything until the conditions are met. Otherwise, we gotta relook how all this is worded, because it doesn't make any sense. You pass something with conditions. If the conditions aren't met, like you pass the subdivision, if the conditions aren't met, they can't go forward with the subdivision.
That should be the case. So if they come to you at a final approval and they still have many, many outstanding things,
Sure, then you
Table
shouldn't, yes. But you could also approve something with, if there's like say there's I don't want to belabor this, but say there was something, a misspelling or something that had to be corrected, you could approve it with the condition that that misspelling gets fixed in the final contract.
true,
Okay? Right?
yes. Yeah, definitely.
You're making me question. I'm gonna have to be more careful, I guess, in the future votes, but I'm still not understanding. I understand what you're telling me. I don't know that I don't know in practice that what's happening is what I intend or hope to have happen on these things. So
Let's
we can
put
have that
this on
conversation.
workshop
Sure.
and talk more about it.
Yeah, it's probably a good idea.
Thank you.
I won't be there, but. So that will bring us to item 1, which is a public hearing, Land Use and Development Code Amendment LD 2003, proposed amendment to the Land Use and Development Code to allow for unit bonuses for affordable housing in the town's growth areas as required by 30A MRSA 4364, also known as LD 2003. And if we could have background from planning, please.
Absolutely, Mr. Chair. So this item was before the board at its last meeting for discussion. So I'll reintroduce it for your benefit for the public. So the state passed a law in 2022 that preempted local zoning with the goal of creating more housing development, in particular affordable housing throughout the state. So municipalities around the state have been updating their zoning to be consistent with the new state mandate, Gorham included. So Gorham made a change to its provisions for accessory dwelling units to come into compliance. Many towns have had to adjust their density allowances to come into compliance. The law requires at least duplexes to be allowed throughout the rural zone and 4 units to be allowed in the growth areas. So Gorham already allowed that, so there was nothing that needed to be done. We were already ahead of the game as far as that is concerned. So there's one item left to come into compliance with the law, and that is a 2.5 times density bonus for certain projects that include affordable housing. They have to include 51% affordable units. And there's a table here in the staff notes that show what is defined as affordable. For rental housing, that's 80% of area median income, and it's based on family size. And for ownership situations, it's 120% of area median income. There's also a provision in there that reduces the parking requirements to 2 parking spaces for every 3 units. So there isn't that much wiggle room in the sort of requirements because it's a state mandate. So there's only so much you can do to adjust it. There are some things you could look at, however. There's also a map that is included with this that shows, based on the state requirements, which areas this has to apply to. So basically, it's areas where multifamily housing is allowed and the growth area. So it doesn't include the industrial zone because there's no housing allowed to be constructed in the industrial zone. And it doesn't include the rural zone. But it includes most of the rest of the zones. So the town attorney has reviewed this, and they found it to be compliant with the new state law. And with that, happy to turn it back over to you. Take any questions after public comment.
Thank you. And this being advertised as a public hearing, we will open it to the public. And anyone from the public who would like to come up and make comment to the board, we ask that you state your name and your address and address the board with your comment. So we will allow that time right now. Doesn't look like there's any public comment, so we will close that portion and of the item and bring it back to the board for discussion. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm having a difficult time understanding the map. And so forgive me. I'm not sure, based on the legend, which areas are this is.
Maybe walk through the map.
Absolutely. So where it says LD 2003 density bonus zones, those are the current zones in the town which are in the growth area and allow for multifamily housing.
Right, so that's all of, like, there's various colors in the map, and the closer I looked at the map, because I just have the digital version, so it's harder to see. So
yeah, so the other color is areas in the comprehensive plan that call for residential growth. So the town has worked to implement most of the changes in the 2016 comprehensive plan. There's still a few outstanding items where there are rural zones that are, for the most part, it's rural zones that are called to be moved over into the suburban residential zone. The suburban residential zone is the town's lowest density zone that's still considered a growth zone. So the growth versus not growth is important for the determination of whether this provision applies, and LD 2003 provisions are really written around whether an area is in the growth area or not.
right, so I see, I have like blue areas, and I have looks like yellow areas, and it looks like I have red color areas. Yeah,
This
kind
probably
of. but
looks like blue
I can't
on
see
the
all
computer.
the colors on the digital version, so you've got to, if you can just show me, hold it up and show me what are you referring to? Which is which area?
Yep. So the darker tan area
Yep.
is the current zoning where this would apply,
Okay.
and the lighter area is the comprehensive plan areas where this would apply.
So it would also apply there. So basically just the blue areas is where it doesn't apply.
And that's up to the board to make a recommendation about. There's some leeway there. The state law does call for this to be applicable in the comprehensive plan residential growth zones.
So
But the thing is, the town's zoning hasn't caught up to that completely yet. So it's a bit of a gray area.
okay, so is that one of the things you're asking us to?
Yes, that's something the board should consider. And then I also was going to mention that, so there's two motions here for this, whether you wanted to iron everything out tonight and then send it back to the town council, because there isn't that much, you really have that much leeway about, or you could take it to a workshop and then make some changes and then bring it back for public hearing and then go to the town council. There is a deadline for this that we've already missed. It was January 1st. Now, there are no penalties per se for missing that deadline, although a court order could compel the town to comply with this or to allow a project to be permitted according to these provisions. No one's come in with one yet, so it's a matter of, I guess, the board's opinion how pressing that is, given that information. Nevertheless, you should know that there was the January 1st deadline.
Yes, Jim?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks. It's clear on mine for colorization. This comprehensive plan is based on the 2016, right?
Correct.
So we know it's in the queue that we have a new plan coming up in 2 more years. 2026, we have to, every 10 years, we have to come up with a revised comprehensive plan.
That is the current goal. They are supposed to be updated every 10 years, yes.
So we're trying to put a stamp on a layout, which could be revised, I suppose, in a few years when the comprehensive plan changes. But we're also looking at values on 2023. To tie these two together, I want to throw this out as an example and shut me down if I'm distracting everyone. We have a project that might have 5 phases. I just took 5 out of the top of my head, no particular project. That would apply, the phase 1 perhaps would apply to 2023 income limits. They don't get to phase 3 for 4 or 5 more years. With phase 3, 4, 5, whenever, would the income limits be based on 2023's dollar value, or are we going to update this every year? You follow me?
I follow you, yes, and that's an excellent question, I would say.
I had a similar question that refers to the passage that talks about the rates are based off local area median income. So what local area are we talking about? Are we talking about the town of Gorham? Are we talking about Greater Portland? Are we talking about
the Portland Heights area?
Yes, it's Greater Portland. So that isn't one of the areas we have leeway over. We can't define a local income threshold for Gorham. We have to use the one provided.
So the state's going to provide that?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
The feds will crunch the numbers.
Yeah.
And the calculation is based on the calculation under long-term affordability? It's not based on this 2023 income limit. You would do it every time a development would come to you. That time frame would be what it is. So it's based on a current calculation based on a calculation that's given to them. It's not based on this chart.
The ordinance essentially points off the page to the current numbers, whatever they are, when it's being reviewed.
When it's being reviewed, so whenever we gave final approval to the development, that's what.
True. It would be based on whatever the current number is.
It could change between the preliminary approval and the final approval.
So it's more of a formula. It's a formula that those are the current numbers.
I just wanted clarity on, before I go any further with this, that somebody has a phase 3 that's built 6, 7 years out, these numbers are going to change significantly. And if they're going to be doing affordable housing, what was affordable in 2024 may not be affordable in 2029 or something.
That is true. And also I'll note that with rental housing, the prices change every year. So there'd have to be some provision, condition of approval, or something in place to make sure that the developer were maintaining those 51% affordable units.
Thank you. I just want a developer to understand that over the course of the project, things are going to change, that what is approved at some point by somebody is not status quo all the way through the duration of the project. Thank you. Thank you for the clarity.
I think, well, unless we want to have a more detailed conversation, I would be in favor of moving this to a workshop. But, the other question I have is, because it wasn't clear from reading this, if a buyer or renter that meets the income requirements, if the property manager or seller can't find a buyer that meets the income requirements, are they then restricted from renting or selling the property because they can't find someone that meets the income requirements? Or do you just, like, you may have 100 apartments and you find 40 people who meet the income requirement, and but you can't find any more people that meet the income requirement. The apartments meet the requirement, but somebody has a higher income. Are they then restricted from taking that apartment? How does that work? And is that something we have to figure out, or is the state prescriptive on that?
There's no language in the state statute about that. We can ask some further questions for workshop material.
Yeah. Yeah.
How that would work. Would everything that wasn't affordable stay vacant? Possibly.
It'd be a big burden for developers, and it would cause maybe somebody not to build it if they're at risk of having it, 20% of their units vacant. So I think we need more information on that.
So, two questions to piggyback on this. One is, we can't be the only ones struggling with that question. If every municipality has to deal with this, how are others dealing with it? Maybe that's something you could dig into and ease the burden on this. Two is, if we do take it to a workshop, you mentioned this is somewhat time sensitive. Is that placing a burden on that timeline by taking it to a workshop and giving it some due diligence? Or do we need to ramrod this thing?
I'd say that's up to the board and to Carol too here, but I think we're already past the deadline, and it may be worthwhile to dig into some of those questions and get it right versus moving ahead with unanswered questions that will plague the board, might potentially cause issues for projects moving ahead.
I don't think I could vote to send this back up to the town council just because it's late. It's not my fault it's late, so that's my take on it.
Okay, well, as chairman of the ordinance committee, I'd like to find out how other communities are dealing with it. If you could bring that information when we meet.
We can certainly look into that, and there are towns nearby who have implemented this already, some which are also still evaluating how to implement it as well. So we're not the only ones in this exact situation with not meeting the deadline on some or other aspect of LD 2003.
Good.
Yes.
So I'll make a motion to move the Land Use and Development Code Amendment LD 2003 to a workshop for future discussion.
Second.
The only question is, should we send that to a specific committee, or should it go to a overall workshop? Or?
The board has a choice. Do you want to do this as an ordinance committee discussion or full board discussion? I mean, the full board can show up to the ordinance committee.
Hey, everybody's welcome.
But it's not a comprehensive plan implementation element. It's really...
So I'll vote to move or I'll make a motion to move Land Use and Development Code Amendment LD 2003 to the Ordinance Committee for review and invite everyone to attend.
Is there a second?
Second.
Jim, second. All in favor? Looks like 5, 6. 6 and a 0, or 6 and a 1?
I'm not in favor.
Okay, so 6-1.
Could we hear why, please? One of the things that we'd like to do is maybe go around the table. Could we hear why, please? Are you comfortable expressing it, or if not, that's okay.
I'm grabbing my mic. In Damon's overview, he says we have one remaining ordinance change to come into full compliance, the 2.5 times affordable housing. I mean, if we're that close to being perfect, then why are we beating it to death? Let's just throw it to the council.
Yeah, it's valid. Does everyone want to revote, or do we want to just move forward with the 6-1? Are we okay? Yes, Jim.
A motion to reconsider,
Okay.
which we have to vote on to say yes or no, and then we can discuss it again.
So there's a motion to reconsider?
Yes.
Second.
All those in favor?
All in favor? Yep, I'll vote. So 6-0 again.
Opposed?
Yep, 6-1, sorry, 6-1, yep. To reconsider.
Do you want me to say why I opposed?
Sure, it's nice to go around the table. I just,
Just teasing.
my,
I would like to get answers to the questions, that's all.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll say, my first leaning was the way Russell felt. And, when I read the timeline on it, I said, we got to move this thing through. And, yeah, I think he summarized it quite quickly, just citing the language. But, based on what you're saying, in some of the thornier questions were asked of, and it seemed like there isn't a huge downside to slowing it down, I'm willing to discuss it at committee.
Can I ask, if we were to send it back to the council, can we at any time look at this to fine tune it?
It is a state law, so
Right.
in terms of fine tuning it, there's not that much opportunity other than the map.
Right.
But in terms of understanding it, we can still do follow-up. Absolutely.
The map is what?
We can add
kind of-
add it to the workshop element kind of thing, and then understand what happens with any decision for that matter.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is an important topic. You hear a lot about it in the news. It's a lot of pressure on communities, so I would like to understand it.
I'm sorry, say that again.
I would like to understand it more, because it is such a topic
Yep.
of discussion.
Yes, Jim.
So this legislative document, 2003, it's pretty much a boilerplate, except for the values given based on the HUD incomes.
Right, yeah.
This piece of paper over here, this is perhaps more of the meat and potatoes that the planning board can adjust zones. Is that correct?
With you have some leeway there. Now, if the comprehensive plan were to change the growth areas, that's where you would look at potentially adjusting this further. Where you have some flexibility potentially is where the comprehensive plan has not been fully implemented, where the zoning is currently rural, for example. You would have some ability to perhaps change the boundaries of this map, but not significantly, I would say.
And so what I heard was, this itself is not in compliance with our existing comprehensive plan
Not yet. We're working as fast as possible, as you know.
on the 2016 plan, correct?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
okay.
We're doing very well.
So
compared to
then-
other towns.
What edits have been made to this, is it, what was colorized here, is what we expect to be in compliance with the 2016 plan?
There is, so that's where your gray area is essentially these yellow areas where you could determine that the boundary would be encompassing of all of the comprehensive plan growth areas, or just the areas that are currently zoned for residential growth, which is the darker tan. That's really the question you have, where you have some gray area. And the other thing I think we heard tonight too was there's some questions about, really it's about the implementation. How do you determine what is, when you're reviewing a project, what is affordable? If you approve something and the developer has said, okay, 51% affordable in 2024, when it's actually built, if that changes, what are, what's the implementation, what's essentially the workflow for the town in actually issuing these building permits and moving ahead once it's left the planning board. I think those are some questions that, that I think we would have on the staff level. Are those questions that need to be addressed in the ordinance? Maybe not, right? So I think that's where we can get an opinion from the town attorney about it. And Carol, I don't know if you have any other thoughts about this breakdown between implementation versus actually.
No, I think the question of when do you do the calculation? Do you do the calculation when you give final approval for a project? And that is what it is for the life of the project, whether it's phased in over 15 years or 45 years, which could happen. And then at that point, how affordable is it going to be in 45 years? So this is a great question, and I think we should ask the town attorney how they foresee this going forward. And if towns have this already in place, because there are towns that have this sort of affordability standard in place, what does it look like during their implementation? How has that been over the years that they've had the ordinance in place? So I'd like to know myself. I think it's a great question.
I'm sorry, so if we're going to have a conversation about it, I also had a question about the parking requirement. I don't understand 2 spaces for three dwelling units. That doesn't make any sense to me. And it certainly not on some of the areas that are on the map. You're going to need a car if you've got a dwelling unit there. So I know there's some opportunity to.
Not that. That is in the state law.
Yeah, so that would cause me to say, well, I'd rather be a little bit more restrictive on it as far as the areas, because it doesn't make any sense to me to have a unit that doesn't have a parking space.
This is very similar to the question we had with the pedestrian overlay. And why is our growth zone so large?
Right.
It's a very interesting question, and it sort of informs another comprehensive plan in the future. These discussions may inform that very well.
Yeah, I guess I still feel like a committee meeting would be worthwhile myself. Does someone want to make a motion or any other discussion? Yes, Russell.
Just a little build on my explanation, if you will, for my initial objection before. And you talk about the town attorney, I mean, it's a state law. And we need to be in compliance. And I think if we sit here wondering and wailing about, suppose some developer in the future can, blah, 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 that's outside our purview, I think. I think it's a law. It's not, we're not proposing or voting on an applicant here allow them to do something. We just need to follow the law and not worry about what might happen in the future.
How about a compromise? How about we do move this thing back to the council and ask our planning staff to do some digging into this thing and come back to us in a workshop setting to give us a primer on how this thing works. And maybe, at that point, Damon, is show the map, tee it up, but kind of put it as Carol, you said, kind of lay it out for adjustment in our next comprehensive plan. Because it sounds like, we don't have a project waiting for us today. So let's get this thing down the road where it needs to be so we're in compliance with the state, but take an opportunity as a planning board to learn more about it.
I like that. Yes, Jim?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, the text is state law. I can put this aside, but I see a disconnect with this
Yeah.
map,
Yeah.
which I think we all agree with. So if we can separate the two somehow, but they're all combined, this we really can't debate.
If there was no map, I don't even know why it would come to the planning board. You know what I mean? Why is it even coming to us? This, what are we talking about? I mean,
It's a land use related issue,
yeah.
so the planning board gets those
I don't know, it's just
always.
one of those, it's like, what am I doing here, you know? I don't know.
But can't we come in compliance with the law and adjust the map later on? We're adjusting the
That's
maps all the
kinda
time.
what I thought.
You can adjust the map at such time as the comprehensive plan is updated. And potentially, outside of that, within more narrow guidelines.
I think you want to make at least a recommendation to the town council, what map they are putting forth for their public hearing. So maybe whittle it down to talk about the land area that you would like to see on the map that they put forth, that is finally adopted with this amendment.
Okay, so you're saying that we just focus any further discussion just on the map?
Well, you do need to vote to send it back to council, but your next 10-minute conversation should be on the map itself.
No, and then just get it done.
So does the board want to include all of the growth area that we have in our comprehensive plan, which is all the beige and the yellow? Let's hold this up.
I would not include the yellow just based on the parking and the other unknown, questions. So that's my thought. I'm open to hearing other people's thought.
I'm sorry, Bill, I missed what you said.
I said my thought is that I would not include the yellow areas because of the parking questions and the other questions that I have. I'd want to restrict.
Yeah.
It's not really that much. But
Given a time,
given
the time
if we're gonna-
constraint we
if we're gonna
have,
that
I think
conversation today.
it's the safe way to go.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking as well.
So I would not include the yellow in this high density area.
I was thinking the same thing, so I'm in favor of that as well.
So to be clear, that would be only the beige areas, deleting the yellow areas.
That's
my thought.
Yep, that's what I think.
So the board should make a motion, maybe two motions. One is to send the ordinance to the ordinance wording, language, back to the council for their own public hearing, with the recommendation that the map that's included contains those areas in beige.
You should have written it down so that we could read it back.
You could say so moved.
No, you can't make a motion.
It would be
That's a cheater method.
the second proposed motion, and then adding on that we recommend it with only the beige areas, which are whatever they're referred to as on there.
Yeah, they're actually showed as the LD 2003 density bonus zones.
All right,
Yes,
all right, so I'll make a motion.
okay.
Move to send the proposed amendment to the Land Use and Development Code to implement the Affordable Housing Density Bonus Overlay District to the Town Council with a recommendation for adoption, including a change to the map that would only include those areas designated in beige color as LD 2003 density bonus zones and not include the areas shown in yellow labeled as comprehensive plan residential growth zones.
Do we have a second, Jim? And all in favor of that one? So it looks like 6-1.
Again, for record keeping, is that oppose or abstain? Opposed. Thank you.
All right.
Our committee's admin who does the minutes appreciates when we
Right,
clarify
yes,
that.
I forgot, yes.
Thank you. Okay, and just for the board's information too, we'll work on getting a memo, advisory memo about implementation to convey to the board at a workshop.
Thank you, that would be good.
Yeah.
So that will take us to item 2, which is another public hearing, Land Use and Development Code Amendment, floodplain, proposed amendment to the Land Use and Development Code to remain in compliance with the National Flood Insurance Program. And I think we chatted on this, but I guess it would be good to hear background again from planning.
Yes, the entirety of Cumberland County has been working with the state and federal government to update the floodplain maps to adjust them where the floodplain actually lies on the land and how it's shown on the map that everyone follows. They've come to an agreement on what that map looks like, and it is online, and it is no longer being disputed as far as I know. It's been a 15-year debate back and forth with many of the coastal communities, but I think they've come to an agreement. So we're, the town of Gorham recommended that we go forward with that map adoption quite a long time ago, and there's no dispute in Gorham at this time with the mapping. The ordinance itself needs to be updated to reflect some changes that were done in 2019, 22, 23, and now 24 to adopt the map. The highlights that are in the ordinance that are really, other than sort of spelling errors or something like that, other than adopting the revised map, would be to designate the code officer as the designated local floodplain administrator. It requires a written certification by a land surveyor when you want to submit approval documents to construct anything in the floodplain. Or in our case, it would be to renovate anything or maintain, reconstruct anything in the floodplain. Because the town does not allow new construction in the floodplain, in this ordinance, we have added that language as a statement to make it blatantly obvious. However, we still need to keep the language about new construction in the ordinance, and you'll see it in there, and you would ask, and so did I, why can't we just remove that? And I was told, you cannot or you will not comply. Okay. I will pass that along. And so I have. It also allows variances for agricultural structures with different criteria that they need to follow in order to reconstruct things. And then there's some updates and additions to the definition section. So those are the highlights of what has been changed and what we need to come into compliance since 2019, really. Admittedly, this ordinance is definitely in draft mode. You'll notice there are some numbers missing, misaligned. Admittedly, this is context and verbiage only, please ignore the, the letters and numbers that we need to redo and add into it. We just didn't have time to get it up to snuff. There's some odd things going on with the formatting, and we need to figure out what it is in order to correct it. But this is to look at content and the verbiage today.
Thank you.
And we do have a deadline as well for this one.
Yes.
I thought I'd mention that, which is in June.
June 20th?
Yes, otherwise, no one in the town will be able to get flood insurance. It will be discontinued immediately.
So if we can look at the timing real quick, I think that would be beneficial. So it's the end of March, and we want this, we would love for this, everything to be, so what has to happen by June 20th? It would have to go back to the town council, and then it would have to be adopted?
They'd have to adopt it.
And as soon as they vote on it, it's good to go?
It's good.
Okay, so that's not too bad. So how soon would it have, they meet the, what is it, the first Tuesday of the month, or second Tuesday?
First Tuesday.
First Tuesday.
First Tuesday?
Yeah. They could do it in May.
First week of June, and then May. Okay. So we don't have any motions in this, included with this item. Missed it? Did I miss it?
Page 28 has motions.
Mr. Chairman, this
I
is,
stopped
this
at
bill is public hearing.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, thank you. Thank you for reminding me. Yes, this,
It is a public hearing.
okay, sorry about that, thank you. This is advertised as a public hearing, and which means we'll open it up to the public, and if anyone from the public would like to come up and speak on the item, please feel free to do so and step up to the podium, mention your name and your address for the record, and address the board with your comment. So we will open it up to the public. Does not look like anyone from the public would like to make comments, so we'll close that portion of the item and come back to the planning board. Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I just want to caution everyone, May and June are, town council meetings are usually filled with financial
School budget.
discussions.
It's a good point.
Is there anything we need to tackle in this thing, or is this a move it along? I mean, we have to get it done.
This is truly move it along.
All right, let's do it.
Yeah, I don't know what we're gonna do here.
Yeah.
There's no real debate about this.
Yeah,
There's no choices in the verbiage. I tried that already.
yeah, so the planning department is combing through this,
Yes,
and the town attorney? Does she-
yes. And the woman at GP Cog, who is the coordinator for the county for this program, she actually gave me an ordinance that repeals the old one and replaces it, and said, here, give this to the town and they'll just adopt it. I said, they'll want to know what the changes are. What are they? So I had to retype the whole thing. So, sorry again about the formatting.
I stop on page 27 on electronic.
I do too.
Yeah,
Back page.
Oh dear.
that's all right. Yes, Jim?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So if I heard this correctly, the only thing we have to worry about is a ton of edits, line throughs, underscores. I trust they've been done correctly, but there's a bunch of them. I'm ready to approve this. I just want to point that out, that
Yeah,
there aren't enough set of eyes to cross-reference and proofread.
And this is gonna go through 2 other people. I'm gonna redraft it to get the numbering and all the formatting correct. And then I'm sending it to the coordinator again to make sure that we are correct. that it can be adopted in perfect compliance with the law before it gets to the town council.
Everyone okay with that? Do we want to make a motion?
Okay, Mr. Chairman, a motion is to send the proposed amendment to the Land Use and Development Code to implement the Affordable Housing Density Bonus Overlay District to the Town Council with a recommendation for adoption.
Is there a second?
Oh, point of order,
Whoop.
sorry. That's the motion from the previous, it looks like it's, we made a mistake
I know,
here
it's
and
the
didn't
wrong page.
update it, sorry, Jim.
It's not the affordable housing, it's the floodplain ordinance.
Yeah.
I see, so
Our mistake, sorry.
I guess we haven't proofread this.
We apologize
Apologize.
profusely.
It didn't come, it came through in the template, but we didn't update it. So it should read floodplain management ordinance instead of affordable housing density overlay district.
So the motion is to send the proposed amendment to the Land Use and Development Code to implement the main floodplain management program
Amendments.
amendment.
Yes.
Town Council with a recommendation for adoption.
Is there a second? Second. All in favor? Looks like 7-0. Push that through. And that brings us to the final item, which is another, it's item 3, which is another public hearing, Land Use and Development Code Amendment. It's a zoning map amendment. Proposed amendment to the Land Use and Development Code to rezone lots on Preble Street from urban residential to office residential. And if we could, again, we chatted on this, but it'd be good to have background again from planning.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. This implements a little section in our comprehensive plan in order to change the zoning along Preble Street. So you may or may not have in front of you. The zone change runs west to east along Preble Street from South Street and stops one property shy of Elm Street. And what it does is it adds in additional options for those property owners to have professional office spaces, limited size retail, it's 4,000 square foot allowance, and limited size personal service uses. Those are the main things that are added to the zone. And right now it's currently residential predominantly zoning.
Thank you. So this basically opens up for additional uses of the spaces on that street or in that area.
A little bit more professional, commercial opportunity. And again, this is a public hearing.
Yes, thank you for reminding me. As a public hearing, we will open it up to the public. And anyone from the public who would like to make comment to the board, we just ask you to step up to the podium and state your name and address, and feel free to make comment.
Yes, hello. My name is Alita Landry, and I'm a resident of Preble Street. And I don't really have an opinion at this point, but I'm wondering what was the thinking and motivation to implement this change?
Well, it is part of the comprehensive plan, so it's a recommendation within that 2016 plan, and it's to expand commercial opportunity in the village area.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And are there any other communities in the area that have this zoning identification?
Well, each town has different zoning within its main core.
Mm-hmm.
Usually in village or urban cores, there are opportunities for multiple mixed-use areas within the walkable area from the core itself. In our village, that's the square. The walkable area generally accepted by the planning community, economic development community professionals is a 5 to 10 minute walking radius. And so within that area is where you want to have opportunity for mixed use, including these kind of things. And it depends on the size of the core area, whether it is village in our case, or it is a dense urban core like something more akin to Portland. It depends on what you allow in terms of scale. And so our allowing a smaller scale business, professional office spaces and retail, we're not allowing Walmart.
Right.
We're allowing, the 4,000 square foot opportunity rather than something that's much, much larger. That would be more in tune to Portland than here.
Okay. So Portland may have this type of zoning classification, residential office or office residential?
Not specifically. Every town has a different zoning classification.
Okay.
They might have it as R2 or C1 for commercial. So every town you look in, it's going to have different kind of look. It might be called professional residential.
Okay.
So the designation is not as meaningful. The terminology is not as meaningful as
permitted
what's
use.
allowed, what's allowed in it.
Okay. Yep.
It's hard to compare exact names of things. They're not perfect descriptors.
Gotcha. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm enjoying the meeting. My name is Keith Lines. I'm Alita's husband, and we've lived there for close to 30 years now on Preble Street. And considerations that crossed my mind were, what is the potential impact for our tax valuation as a result of this potential zone alteration? And I guess that's about it, or whether the comprehensive plan might also include any kind of infrastructure alterations to enhance this kind of business environment. And that's my only concern, would be the potential income tax change in status, and just the viability of selling property or whatever. I mean, we're quite happy there. It's a fine neighborhood, and we really love the town. And but I don't know if people would sell their places. Our neighbors would sell off or whatever. I'm just curious as to what you might understand as potential impacts. Anybody have any, what's the motivation, like Alita mentioned, to enhance development in some manner? What things might happen that's, with the development? How do you foresee the neighborhood changing? Any considerations?
I think I think those are some of the things we'll discuss, definitely, and I have some of those questions as well. I think those are great questions.
Yeah, we're very much interested. We just love the town, and look forward to contributing in any way we can. So keep up the good work, and thank you for informing us, and we look forward to a better understanding.
Thank you. If there's no other public comment, we will close that portion of this item and bring it back to the board. What does the board think? Is this the type of item we should look at in a committee meeting? Or do we need to, or are we comfortable, discussing here and sending on, or?
I'm quite comfortable with discussing it. My own opinion is, it doesn't require that much discussion. I got a few questions, but that's about it.
Okay. Yes, Jim.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just curious, 10 Preble Street, is that X'd out? Why is that highlighted?
It has its own special zoning. It's a conditional use zone.
I was hoping that someone from the Gorham Village Alliance was going to be here, because the corner of South and Preble, there's been some beautification issues over the years. Kathy Garrard was a member at the time. I don't know if we've got any comments from the Gorham Village Alliance or anything about, that's a nice little parcel of grass and stuff there. Different high school teams have used that for selling Christmas trees or other items over the years. And I suspect the rec department would have some feedback on that spot. Even though we're trying to be in compliance with this 2016 comprehensive plan, we're going to take literally existing residences and we're going to change what the zone is for them. That's the proposal.
Keep in mind, they don't have to do it.
Who doesn't have to do it?
If you don't want to have a business in your house, you don't have to. It's for the people that might want to.
I understand. I'm just curious, though, because I heard a really important question about real estate tax, perhaps, that the tax will be based on what it could be used for, not what it is used for.
Generally speaking, that is true, in my observation over the years.
This was formerly a series of fraternity houses, as I recall, a few years ago. That was a very popular area. Chief Shepherd could speak to it, I'm sure.
We survived it, thanks to the council.
Yes.
Yeah, so the only motivating factor that you've stated to bring this forward at this time is to come in line with the comp plan.
Yes, and it's articulated the reason why. It's written in the comp plan, but I just don't happen to have that in front of me right now.
But there has been no, I'm kind of curious. I thought a homeowner may have had a motivating factor and wanted to, create an office or some home business that may have spurred this on, or that Kevin in economic development had, has he had any say in this matter?
Not that I'm aware of. That doesn't mean they haven't been talking to someone, and we just don't happen to know of it. And I'm looking at Damon did you overhear anything?
I do believe there's been discussions, and Kevin, I think, was at the town council ordinance committee meeting, I believe, and it's part of the town's big picture economic development strategy to diversify the tax base to allow for more non-residential development. And what this does is, well, it doesn't create a new zone. There's the office residential zone, which exists currently, and it's a map amendment. So for an example of where else you might see this, it's actually in Gorham already along Main Street between approximately New Portland Road down to around Shamrock Lane, just past Libby Avenue. So it's it exists here, and what it is a mixture of sort of all of the above. It's the residential zoning that you see there, plus additional commercial uses.
So the permitted uses listed here, on what page is this?
Page 2.
Page 2, thank you. Those would be all allowed in this one block.
Correct, and where it says that, any building or use identified as a permitted use in the urban residential district. So what it does is it points to, if you look at the zoning code, you'll look to the next district up. So it's inclusive of, it's expanding the number of uses without removing uses. So I hope that is helpful as clarification.
That is true. The town council is looking to expand a number of opportunities for commercial uses in the village, and are going to bring a few tweaks here and there to the ordinances to allow more commercial things.
Thank you, Carol. You answered the question that I'm now going to ask. What provoked the town council to do this?
Well, this is implement the comp plan, but they really want to spur on more. So within the comp plan confines, they can't radically change a lot of things, but they can tweak along the edges. And so they're doing some things with the home occupation standard to allow a little bit more under that.
Yep. Thank you.
A couple of questions. The property that's red, I'm assuming they came to the planning board or the town council to ask for a specific use exception to the zoning?
I don't know the history of that. I haven't heard the history of that one. This is the zoning of that.
But they have some specific use that they're applying there, and so other properties could do the same thing in that area.
In this case, it's a conditional use, if I recall, which is a special specific use.
Right.
They could do a contract zone on a parcel.
Another homeowner could do something similar if they wanted to add a business to their home.
Yes.
So that was one question. The second, is the open lot there next to Roby Gym, is that privately owned?
No, that's the town.
The town owns that.
Yes.
Okay. And this doesn't indicate they're looking to sell it or to have it developed?
No.
Does this open that up?
No conversation that I've heard.
But this potentially opens it. But this potentially opens it up for that. I don't know if that is some special. I always assumed it was in the park.
It's not a park or open space.
Not okay.
Designated parcel. We don't have that kind of zoning in the town.
Huh.
The closest thing we have to that is rural.
Okay.
Which allows development on parcels.
And
this is, it's currently residentially zoned.
But owned by the town.
But owned by the town.
And then the last thing would be, is it worth having a conversation about if we change I understand the reasoning for changing it, and I actually think it makes sense in respect to the comprehensive plan, but I'm also sensitive to the question about property taxes, and I was wondering if there was a way to, for people who live there, to grandfather in the existing rates as applied to, through the current zoning, and it doesn't apply until somebody changes residence and moves. So the new tax rate wouldn't be applied until there's a change of ownership with the property. So they wouldn't, so somebody who has a residence wouldn't be taxed as a business.
I've not heard of that as a available option, but the town could look at legally if that's possible.
Yeah, I mean, because if we could somehow segregate or grandfather the tax piece, I would be happy to send this forward.
Mm-hmm. I think it's a great idea, Bill. Jim, have you heard of anything like that?
No, the parcel beside Roby, just for the time I've been around, somebody wanted to pave it one time, and that got nixed, and again, Gorham Village Alliance has been the most vocal advocate for this area, where they're putting flower boxes and things like that, and there's also across the street, next to the cemetery, there's an area that was parceled out. I believe that we have granite benches now. So they're trying to sprinkle things around the village area, specifically to enhance its beautification, floral, et cetera. But like I say, that corner lot has been used by high school sports teams over the years.
Yeah. Gorham Swing uses it.
So, swim team, right? Christmas trees, yeah. Kyle Currier and was involved. I'm just kind of surprised that 10 has its own little breakout.
So how would we do the tax piece if others are interested in doing that? How would we forward it with a recommendation, or?
Ask the town attorney to find out if that's possible within the tax law.
So that would require us to table this? Or to
If
send
you
it
would,
to?
if you would like that answer prior to sending it to public hearing,
Yeah.
I mean, at the town
To
council.
the town,
level.
to the town council?
Yeah. Yes.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. So if we're playing tennis here and my turn to serve, rather than have all of these units, parcels, be forced to go into office residential, I would entertain that each one of these can go back and ask for a special exemption to become office residential, so that all of them aren't. We won't have to worry about taxing or not taxing all of them. Let's just tax those units that specifically want to become office residential. In the town, the corner lot there, they're not going to tax themselves anyway, so.
It would just require everybody to come in, right?
I would
each
suggest
time.
a workshop, so you can find out some more information about this.
Yeah, do we want to workshop this, or? We can get the answer to that question, and then any other things we can talk about. What do we think?
First thing that comes to mind is, okay, if you're going to workshop this thing, if we're going to talk of, doing these two suggestions, which are both very interesting, I'm thinking, well, should the net be cast broader, around the fringes of the village? Because, are we talking about a way that you would grow it out? Not just Preble Street, but, are we looking at
I'm sorry.
are we looking at a way to possibly grow the village further, down the road?
That's the question the town council asked. The answer is not within the current comprehensive plan. It's pretty specific.
Okay.
That's why they're tweaking the edges where they can.
You mentioned that.
That's really the best that we can do. To go above and beyond the comprehensive plan is legally tenuous.
No, that's discussion for 2 years out. Is there enough to take to a workshop meeting? I mean, other than, you go out and you're going to ask the attorney for some answers, and it may just close the door real quick before it opens doors. And I don't know if there'd be enough to even have a workshop on, depending on the answers.
That or table, I guess. Table it to the next meeting.
Carol, and David, I think I'd like to hear from Kevin on this as well, and find out, does economic development have a stake in this thing? I'd like to know. So yes, I'd be open to table it and hearing back from the attorney, hearing from economic development. I'd like to hear a little bit more about it. And then, Jim, you've mentioned about the Village Alliance. Do they have an opinion on this thing?
Oh, the rec department. I mean,
Yeah, sure.
also
Roby
wanna
School
know-
could use an expansion.
Would the assessor have some input as to whether it makes sense to zone individual properties and tax them differently?
In terms of zoning individual properties, there's something called spot zoning.
Right.
Which you want to steer way away from.
Need a district.
You need a district.
I guess the question would be of the assessor, what would that change tax-wise? You know, would it increase or decrease the tax rate?
We could table it and bring back some answers to these questions and/or some people for you to ask questions of who would normally deal with this.
And if you find that you have more information than for one of our agendas, then I'd say, you know, would just go ahead and throw it to a workshop.
Yeah, we could table it and then always do a workshop after that.
Well, I'm saying if they find, if their findings are that there's very few, there's no latitude here, and then it's probably not worth sitting down in a workshop. But if you find out, yeah, there are some avenues that are worth kicking around, then I'd say let's give them the latitude to schedule a workshop. Just my thoughts.
Would we like to go ahead and make a motion?
Let's see. Motion at the end of this thing. Oh, yeah, all right. Let's see, what do we got here? Move to table the proposed zoning map amendment for rezone of Purple Street Office Residential District, well, what are we saying, until pending further input from planning staff.
Is there a second? Jim, all in favor? Looks like we have 7-0. Thank you. Takes us to the end of the regular portion of the meeting and brings us to other business. Just like to say I thank you for your time, and it was a pleasure serving on the planning board with you folks.
Well done, Vince.
Thank you. Any other business? Any announcements? Is there a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second? All in favor? Looks like all in favor, 7-0. Thank you. Have a good night. Thank you.
Yeah.